Are you having problems or challenges with the inner critic? Well, today, or that voice in your head. Well, today I'm going to talk about some tips that have really helped me work through my inner critic with you. And if you stay until the end, I have an extra point for you then as well. Now, before we dive in, if you're looking to enhance your confidence and self esteem with every episode, ensure you're fully in the loop and don't miss out on any valuable insights. All you got to do is click in the link in the show notes below for that essential boost and exclusive extra tips to keep you confidently ahead. Just find that in the show notes below. So, my story with the inner critic. Well, I'm a human being, so I'm always going to have one. The thing is, it's about the relationship with one. I often speak to people and they're like, oh, I've got such this like self-criticism and they feel all alone. You're not all alone. There's many, many people who struggle with this negative inner voice. The difference is, I believe people handle it different, have different relationships. Some let it completely rule them. And I used to do that. And some actually work through it, through their experiences. Now, of course, your experiences, your life, your beliefs, what went on in your childhood, what went on through your life since then is going to have an impact on you, and therefore have that inner critic's going to link to that a lot. But I believe if you believe you can change, I believe anyone can change, right? And work through it. Okay. So I found it show up a lot more in some areas in my life than others. Again, this is what different people said to me. This is what the research and that I've looked at and what I've heard people talk about. In some areas, the inner critic's a lot worse, right? I was horrendous in my teenage years and actually my 20s as well. But in my teenage years, it was how I performed in school or in sport, mainly in football, because I loved it and I was obsessed with it, even though I wasn't the greatest, right? In school, if I was like doing well on tests and things like that, I'd be like, great, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. If I did bad or even slightly average on something, I would be horrendous. I'd be like, you're useless, you're stupid, you're pathetic. And I remember a girl just saying something to me on the school bus on the way home. And she was like, if I look now, but obviously I was a young teenager, not knowing any of this stuff then, she said something and it was, she wasn't like the quietest girl. Let's say she did like to share her opinions a little bit, but I believe she had a good heart. But anyway, she would sometimes wind me up and stuff like that, and I usually head it in. But she said something once, and I felt like it insulted my intelligence, and I went absolutely mental at her. And that's because the inner critic was screaming. And actually, that's what can happen, I find, is that I can lash out at someone. It's really sad and really upsets me to say I once lashed out on my amazing, wonderful mum after like a bad football game because I was just so upset. And she just asked me one simple thing. And then I went, and luckily, she's a wonderful human being. So she gave me a hug. But yeah, the inner critic can be really bad, and that kind of made me a little bit emotional talking about that because I don't like lashing out at people I care about. That the inner critic can be, unfortunately, I feel like the inner critic can be so bad for some of us that we end up hurting people around us. Lucky I could sort of pay attention to. I'm quite a sensitive individual, so if I've hurt someone close to me, I don't like that, and I'm very quick to adjust the behavior. But I found sometimes even in my 20s that actually I would act in bad ways because the inner critic was playing havoc and I wasn't dealing with it. In my 20s, it was based on how well my career was going and also my dating life. It was a lot about ego. And I think quite a lot of people are, to be honest. It's all not generally, most people I know don't really do too much deep work into their heart and really get into that place. It varies from person to person. Not that we're bad human beings, it's just we're very conditioned to be in the mind. And if I was like, oh, meet a beautiful girl and whatever, it'd be like, I feel like I'm feeling good, I'm a good looking guy, I do all good. But if it was going bad, I was like, I'm useless and pathetic, no one likes me, and all that kind of thing. In career, if it was like, I got a job interview, I'm excited about this, I'm really great, people think I'm intelligent. If I did bad in like a job interview or didn't get one, I'd be like, I'm hated, people think I'm pathetic, everyone's horrible to me. That's just how that kind of internal dialogue was going. And I just want to be honest with you. And then I hit 30, and yeah, I've had my ups and downs totally. I started really diving into this a lot more, and it was around the time, obviously, I started this podcast as well. Now, the inner critic could be like come out in forms like comparing ourselves to others, perfectionism, fears, past mistakes, if we don't learn to work with it. And it's not about controlling it and like forcing it, like, no, I want to think positive and just arguing that. It's about developing a relationship with yourself. Now, I want to ask you this. How does it feel when you let the inner critic rule you and run your life, and you don't feel like you've got any say in your life? Well, if you're anything like me, it did not feel good. So now I want to move on to some practical steps you can use to really start working with the inner critic for better self-confidence and self-esteem. So the first point, I just really want to emphasize that again, is kind of emphasizing a little bit what I said, is developing a relationship rather than fighting it. Now, how do you do that? I found what's effective for me is journaling, just being like, okay, what's coming up in my head? And let's write it down, write it out. What's coming up here? Okay, let's work together. All the parts of me, let's work together to create the best possible life, right? Maybe that's journaling, maybe it's meditating, maybe it's sitting in silence or something like that. The second thing is when a negative thought or belief comes up, it's about drilling down. And the more self-awareness work you do, the more aware you become. I often find like the bottom of pretty much any negative thought or belief now comes, if I drill deep enough, just comes down to the fear of not being loved, or therefore the fear of death at the really real root cause. And even just silly little things can trigger that off. As it's been said, there's a great book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin, let me say that again, Gavin Becker. And actually it associates public speaking, drills down to the fear of death. It's like, this is how it works. It's like public speaking, fear of being judged, fear that I'm not enough, fear that I'm not loved, therefore death. That's crazy. And your brain just suddenly automatically creates that link unless you train it to do something. The inner critic will do that. So ask yourself why it's BS, right? So, for example, in that case, you'd be like, I'm not going to die if I slip up on my speech. Like, to be honest, people, this is easier than done. This is why doing it again and again will actually, practicing and doing something, coming out of your comfort zone again and again and again, will actually train that inner critic a lot more. So asking yourself why a lot of this stuff the inner critic comes up with, like, oh my God, that's terrifying, is actually BS. Now, obviously, now and then there's actually fear, like in our brain, and that can be useful. Like if someone or a wild animal was chasing us, and we're like, oh my God, I've got to run. That's probably a good idea. But when you start getting fearful with day-to-day situations and the inner critic comes in and goes, you're not enough, you can't do this, don't do that, and all these kind of things, then start paying attention to that and asking yourself why that's false. Okay. The third one is connect to your heart. And how do you do that? I find breath work is a really good one for me. When you breathe into the heart, you can really connect yourself. Also, I like listening to binaural beats, which are really, really good for going deep into myself as well. The fourth one, surround yourself with good quality people. If you've got negative people around you, their voices, what they're saying, their beliefs, it's going to rub off on you. We adapt to our environment. I've said this many times. I think it's such a valuable point though. So, and I found this even with people who are not negative people, they just got their kind of own goals and ambitions in life. And sometimes like mine is slightly different, slightly bigger, slightly outrageous. And actually, there's part of them that doesn't believe it because they don't believe like they can go big, and it's fine. They can do absolutely what they want. Yet when I surrounded myself with like high performing entrepreneurs, it's a different story. I'm like getting pushed. So surround yourself with good quality people as much as possible, because that will silence the inner critic. You've got negative people. If you do have genuine negative people like attacking you or attacking life or themselves, then that's also going to rub off on you and really impact and cause chaos with your inner critic, because it will take that on board. And then the fifth one is just create some empowering beliefs. Write down everything you'd like to believe about yourself and then read it, feel it every single day. That's really, really helpful for me. I spend about an hour doing that each day. But you think, oh, that's crazy. How do you find the time? Well, it actually saves me a lot of time because I create so much belief in myself that I actually don't overthink things as much. I go for what I want. My brain naturally starts identifying the needle movers, so I don't start having these doubts and these fears within me. All right, maybe you just start with 30 minutes for that one, okay? Right, my bonus point I'm going to get to in a minute. Just before I get onto that, I wanted to mention that if you want to stay on top of every episode, you can click the link below. Not only will you never miss out, but you'll also receive weekly insights designed to nurture your self-confidence, self-esteem, and mindset. So join us and embark on a journey of personal growth by hitting that link below in the show notes. Okay, my bonus point I really wanted to share with you, it's just kind of touches on identifying the negative beliefs, and I was asking them why they're false. I wanted to go a little bit into a process I do that's been really useful. Every single day, what I'll do is if anything negative comes up, I just note it on my phone. It's like, okay, maybe I saw something on social media, which is a huge trigger for quite a lot of people when they see certain things. Maybe like, okay, I saw that on social media, and therefore it made me like anxious. It made me doubt myself. It made me sad. Just make a note of that. Make a note on your phone. Capture it rather than it going back in your mind and then coming back again and going on. And then what I like to do at the end of the day is just like journal it. I ask myself why it's false. What was that all about? It's like, what did that link to? And by consciously focusing on something that's unconsciously that's been unconsciously wired in some kind of crazy association to death, the fear of death in my mind, when I can see it for what it is, write it down, ask myself, like, why is that triggering me off? Then I'm able to feel more empowered and therefore more confident in myself because I know it's not real. So that's just the process I'd invite you to try as well. So I appreciate you for being here. You're improving other people's lives by being the best you. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.